So,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Activity Strong webinar. My name is Meg Laporte, and I am with the marketing team of Link Senior. For today's webinar, we are providing one free NAB, NCCDP, NCTRC, and NZSRDT CEU credit. To be eligible for the CEU credit, you need to remain on the webinar for the full hour. At the end of the webinar, I will provide you with a post-webinar CEU survey evaluation link that in the chat box, and it will also be sent to you by email this afternoon. So please check your spam folders for that. If you have any, the survey must be, completed by midnight Eastern time this Thursday. If you have any questions, please email us at webinars@linkedsenior.com. CEU certificates will be issued by email before the end of the day on Friday. And that's it. And now to Charles, our CEO.
thank you so much, Meg. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be with all of you for our Activity Strong webinar, the impact of well-being on those living with dementia. Emily, thank you so much for being with us straight from York, Pennsylvania. And just a few quick notes before we get started with today's session. We're using Zoom, as we all know. The chat gets really busy. To make sure that everyone sees your valuable contribution, make sure you select everyone from the dropdown. A little bit of background about Activity Strong. This platform was initiated by Link Senior, but we do this with amazing organization in partnership with amazing organizations that include Activity Connection, NAP, and NCAP. And that's it. So like Meg said, my name is Charles. I am the CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. Link Senior is a resident engagement platform for senior living. We also started in this initiative called Old People Are Cool, which is all about fighting ageism, celebrating age. We think that everyone is cool, including elders or residents. And as some of you might know, also Activity Strong was started early in 2020 with the whole purpose, which is to acknowledge the amazing work of activity and life enrichment professionals, but also empower them and educate them. So very excited for this session. It is very much in the line of our quote-unquote line of work, which was all about engagement. This is a little bit about us. We are proud of partnering with thousands of professionals, and we touch the lives of 50,000 residents. Our work is evidence-based, and it was published in a peer-reviewed journal. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out. For today's session, I'm very excited. I had time to review Emily's slides, and for me, it struck a special chord because before starting Link Senior, I wrote my thesis on nursing homes and kind of understanding what the quote-unquote thing does and doesn't do for society and so on, and how we can all improve it. And a lot of my initial research was obviously very much infused with the work of Dr. Bill Thomas, which Emily is likely going to tell us more about, but is the founder of the Eden Alternative. So as a quick way of introducing today's session, I thought about just talking about one of my personal experiences, which is very much summarized by this quote. Here, Gandhi is the one that is saying it, but I think it's been attributed to a number of people. And I think it's one of the fundamental pieces of what we love to think about when we think about activities and life enrichment, right? The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. And I know because we speak to many hundreds of activity professionals, many of them show up at work for the sole purpose to help elders find purpose every day. And so one of the reasons why I'm really excited about today's session from Emily is purpose is obviously the goal, and it's fine, it's good. But often we think a little bit about how to achieve that. And the Eden's Way, this well-being framework, is a way to operationalize things systematically and ensure the success of that end goal. So this is one of the many reasons why I'm excited to introduce you all to Emily Connors, who's the community builder for the Eden Alternative. And I'll brag on your behalf, but I should say also that Emily is a CTRS and also a CDP. And I'm sure that's going to go a long way with our audience today, because we all are here to help the resident experience. Emily, thank you so much. I'll let you share your screen and take it away, and impatient to hear more about all of that magic.
Thank you so much. Let's see here. Okay, so thank you
Perfect.
so much. I love seeing all of the names and people popping in from all over, to really be able to be open to the idea of understanding what really is well-being and how does it impact those who are living with dementia. So as you know, Charles mentioned, I started my experience in long-term care back in 1997. As a recreation therapist, and I absolutely love the field, love education. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at the York College of Pennsylvania. Started my 18th year there already, but I just love education and being able to provide people with tools and resources that can help them continue to make a difference. So with my role with the Eden Alternative, it is perfect for me. As a community builder, I'm able to go out into communities and work with educational teams, leadership teams, care partner teams, to really be able to bring them resources and really just looking at how do we shift our paradigm? How do we shift our approach to what we're doing to better meet the needs of those that we're supporting? I wanted to share, some of you may have heard of the Eden Alternative, some of you may have not. And the Eden Alternative is actually celebrating our 30th anniversary this May. And we are doing that. I'm going to share with you a little bit more detail at the end of the webinar today, but we are having an international conference in June to really kick off and celebrate this exciting anniversary. But we are a worldwide nonprofit organization with the goal of helping communities, looking at how do we change from that institutional model of care into homes, and not home-like, but homes. And here's our mission statement. And I want to point out a few things with our mission statement here, that our focus is well-being. And we are looking at the well-being of elders and care partners. So we want to support those individuals who are receiving care as well as the care partners. When we talk about and utilize the terms elders and care partners, and I'm going to say some other ones throughout the webinar that hopefully catch your attention, we really believe that words make worlds. And, you know, looking at culture change and how we really start instituting that is really looking at the language we're using. So when we talk about the term elders, we are not referring to people of a certain age. We refer to elders as those individuals who are teaching us how to live. And then care partners, right? We often use the term caregivers. But we really believe in the term care partnering and that give and take in a relationship. And we talk about employee care partners and family care partners, volunteer care partners, anyone that's involved in the support for elders that are living in communities. You will see at the bottom there, I do have our website. If you're interested in learning more about the Eden Alternative, there's a lot of information on the website. Resources as well as descriptions of things that we can do, that we provide that support for communities. So feel free to take a look at that in your free time. But the way that we really believe that we can begin the journey to truly meet well-being for all is through person-directed care. And I really want to point out the difference there, right? It's not person-centered, it's the person-directed care. So those arrows of give and take are going both ways, right? We often think about all the things that we care for and our responsibilities and meals that we're preparing and caring for our friends and others and our homes and laundry and meals, and then moving into an institutional model of care. Everything is being done for an individual. And how would that affect your well-being? What purpose would you have for waking up and embracing the day? So with person-directed care, we're looking at how do we recognize those unique needs and preferences of each individual. So I'm not sure how many are on this webinar right now, but if I polled all of you right now for what your unique interests are, what are your daily routines, what are your preferences, we would have so many varieties of answers. And then looking at tomorrow, we are all moving into a nursing home together or personal care together. The standard typical institutional model of care does not meet the needs for each individual. And how does that affect your well-being? With person-directed care, we're also looking at decisions. Decision-making is so important in our lives, and looking at with resident-directed care or person-directed care, how do we make sure that the decisions are being made closest to the resident or those working most closely with the resident? So instead of decisions happening from the farthest removed and trickling down to impacting the resident, how do we look at changing that concept of our processes that we have in place? How do we look at getting the resident input first, then the direct caregivers, right? Whether or not it's CNAs or housekeepers or dietary workers, recreation workers, how do we get that input from those individuals who are impacted the most closely working with those elders? The Eden Alternative had a grant back in 2006 because we were looking at well-being. And what does that really mean, right? It's kind of a term that's thrown out there a lot, but to look at it more in depth, what does that really mean? In 2006, the Eden Alternative had a grant, and they partnered with 3 other culture change organizations to really research this and get a better understanding of what well-being truly means, with the understanding that well-being is our ultimate outcome, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here on this webinar, right? Those of you in the recreation profession, that's what we want for all, is well-being. We're looking at this mindset, okay? And this looks, if you look at it from a glance, it looks messy. Our institutional models, right? When we're looking at these decision rings, the institution is in the center. And then we move to person-centered, where we have the person in the middle and all of the arrows are going in. Okay, we're proposing this well-being mindset where we have care partners that are family members, volunteers, different levels of people working within the organization. And that well-being is so important for each one of us and helps us, if our well-being is intact and nurtured, that helps us be able to provide best support possible. In a true community, okay, think about this, right? And right now, we all live and work in communities. So one day, if we need support, if we need nursing support and we move into a community, we can only experience true well-being if those around us are also. And when I read this and really think about it, unfortunately, COVID did teach us a few things. And I feel like, especially those of us in recreation, our well-being was really impacted and affected by seeing those around us and those that we are supporting, their well-being was negatively impacted. We saw elders who were lonely, who were bored, who missed that connection, right? And that impacted us and our well-being. And the same scenario, elders that we're supporting are affected by care partners around them. So we can't just focus on one or the other. We really need to consider everyone within that community and really look at that ultimate goal of well-being for all. So we have the Eden Alternative came up with 7 domains of well-being. Okay, and before I go into them, I'm just going to ask, if you don't mind, quickly, just drop in the chat, what does that word well-being, what does that mean to you? And Charles or Meg, I don't know if you could read just a few of them.
Yes, happy to. Well, there's many of them. Elder, peace, happy, pray, well-being, health, balance, quality of life, peace with oneself. There's a lot, Emily.
Yes, yes.
Fulfillment, empowered,
Mhm.
balance, yeah,
That's
needs.
wonderful. Yes. So thank you for putting that in the chat. Well-being, and not everyone entered the same information, right? Charles had a whole bunch of different answers to read off because well-being means different things to different people. And what might be important for my well-being may not be a consideration for your well-being. I want to bring your attention to this quote from Dr. Bill Thomas, which Charles mentioned at the beginning. He's the founder of the Eden Alternative. And he wrote a book in 2004, and that's where this quote came from. But I want to point out a few things from this that really stand out in regards to well-being. Okay, so well-being is much more than customer satisfaction. Right. So oftentimes in skilled care, personal care settings, we pride ourselves, right? We're doing a great job. We have our customer satisfaction surveys and we had 80%, right? And so we must be doing a great job. Well-being is well beyond a customer satisfaction survey. Okay. It is also holistic. Okay. This is where I'm really challenging you throughout the webinar today to think about in order to be making these changes, we have to do things differently than what's been accepted. And typically accepted in nursing home and personal care environments is that physical need, that physical component, physical health. But individuals, we know, are so much more than that physical piece. Again, another thing that we saw firsthand from COVID, right? We may not have had COVID, but we were isolated and we were bored. We weren't able to engage in meaningful things or have relationships with people beyond a Zoom, right? There's so much more to an individual than just their physical needs. And the last piece there, that it's elusive and it's subjective, right? Well-being is something we're constantly striving for, and it's constantly changing. So you may wake up with your well-being. We recommend, thinking of them as cups, and your cups may be really full when you wake up, and something could happen by the afternoon that your well-being is more off kilter. And then it can get filled again. So it is very valuable. It is something that is important to each of us and very needed, regardless of who you are, what you're doing, and if you have dementia or not. Even individuals who are living with dementia, well-being is so important and really impacts their life on a consistent basis. So as we talk about the domains of well-being, okay, that's our ultimate goal, right? Creating that well-being. And I'm going to talk about each of these, but what I'd like you to do, if you don't have a piece of paper and pen nearby, I want you to grab a piece of paper and pen, or on your computer, open up a Word document. Because as I talk about each of these, I really want you to just be honest with yourself and start a list. Okay. By the end, I'm hoping that you'll have 20 to 30 things listed there, right? I want you to think about, when I'm describing what this domain of well-being is, to write down for yourself, what do you need? What does it mean to you? Okay. And as we go along, I'll explain it in more detail. But by the end, I want you to have a good list of what you specifically need for your well-being. Okay. No one is going to see this list besides you, so you can be completely honest with it. Okay. So the first domain of well-being is identity. Okay. And when we think about identity, I want you to consider, if you're meeting a new group of individuals, what are you sharing with those people, right? Typically, we're not walking up to them and saying, "Hi, I'm Emily. I have diabetes and anxiety, and I'm resistive with care, and I'm a 2-person assist." Right? I might share with you my background, my roles. And, I'm a mother. I have 2 children. I'm married. I teach. I do this. I love sports. Right? We have so many things about us, our whole lives, our history, experience beyond our diagnosis. Okay, and think about what that means to you. Right? What's important for people to know about you. I remember when I was considering, with my CTRS, and my husband was asking me about it. And I said, that therapeutic recreation is part of who I am. You don't understand. It's part of me. I can't let that go. That's part of my identity, right? What makes up your identity? And what does that feel like if that's not seen, right? How would you feel if walking around every day you were seen by simply your diagnoses? So thinking about identity, and just some questions to throw out to think about. Okay, these aren't things that we're talking about as a group, but just for you or even your teams after this webinar, to digest together. Okay, how do we get to know each other in a way that highlights each person's unique identity? And I know many of you are sitting there right now saying, oh, we have the MDS questions, right? We ask about music, we ask about pets, or maybe you have a TR assessment that you ask general questions. But I'm going to challenge you that how often are we finding out information, and how deep are we getting? So often in this scenario, we're scratching the surface, right? We're finding out that someone likes music, they like country music, whatever, but are we finding out how they like to listen to it, when they like to listen to it, what level of volume do they like to listen? Do they like to sing along? Do they like to play? There's so much information that is about a person's identity. How are we really finding that out? And how are we continuing to nurture that as someone is living in our community beyond the standard annual assessment? In addition, that second question there, how do care partners help people continue to become well known? So it's really important as a care partner to be seen as an individual, not as a number, right? We talk about retention. Okay, employees, employee care partners who feel seen, who feel appreciated for who they are and their unique strengths and abilities are going to stay at a community where they don't just feel like a number that I'm here to meet the ratio of staffing, right? So how do we find out and help care partners become well known to each other? What processes do we have in place for that? Okay, so I'm going to give you 20 seconds. I know it's not a lot of time. 20 seconds. I want you to write down anything that you need for your identity. So for instance, maybe your job, maybe your children, your spouse, what do you need to really have your identity of who you are be seen? Okay, so I'll give you 20 seconds to write those down. Okay. You can keep adding to it as we go along. Just make sure you're numbering them as we go through the webinar. So the next one is connectedness. Okay. And connectedness is really that human need to feel like you belong. Okay. And this goes beyond people, right? The desire to be connected and feel connected with people is important to be a part of a group or a community. But connectedness also includes nature. Some people love to be in nature all the time. Some people don't have that need so much. It also includes that need to feel connected to spirituality, not necessarily religion. Could be religion, but spirituality in whatever way that individual needs. So that need to feel like you're a part of the community, like you have that purpose, that you're valued, and that you are a part of that organization there. And a question to ponder is, how are members of the care partner team connecting with one another regularly? And I really want you to focus on that word connecting, okay? Because connecting is not passing in the hall and saying hi, right? Hey, how's it going? That's not connecting, okay? When we talk about connecting, we're talking about on a deeper level. What opportunities do we provide and encourage and nourish care partner team members interacting with each other? Again, I also want to point out care partners are employees, family members, volunteers. Each individual has has this need to feel connected. So what are we doing to nourish that? Okay, and then I want you to add to your list. I'm going to give you 20 more seconds. Add to your list. What do you need personally to feel connected? Okay. Again, you can keep adding to your list with identity and connectedness. Hopefully you have at least 5 or 6 things written down by now. The next one that we're focusing on is security. Okay, and I'd like to ask you all, how many of you on just any time sitting in your living room tonight when you're watching television in your comfy clothes and sitting in your favorite chair, doing whatever, how many times do you have someone knock on your front door and walk in and stand in your living room? I would imagine not often. And how would you feel if that was something that could occur at any time? How safe and secure would you feel in your home if that could happen at any time? Anyone could walk in that front door. Maybe you have a key, but so do other people, and they can let themselves in. Okay. It sounds silly because that doesn't happen, right? But in nursing homes and personal care settings, it happens all the time. We might knock quickly and walk through, right? Knock and, hey, how are you? We don't give time for the person to welcome us into their home because we're approaching it as our workspace and we have a task. We need to get them to sign this paper. We need to give them a medication. We need to invite them to something, right? So we knock and approach. But if you think of it from the perspective of this is their home, we wouldn't want that in our home. And how would that affect us and our feeling of security? Okay, same thing, safety, financial safety is a huge piece that human beings have a need for, right? Anxiety, to not feel anxious about whether it's, so who's going to enter. You may have people fearful that someone's poisoning their food, right? They might be hearing staff members talking about someone's diagnosis or behaviors or things like that in a common area and then feel anxious. I wonder what they're saying about me, right? We all have that need to feel safe and secure. And what does that safety and security mean to you? Oops. Okay. So how do care partners protect the dignity and privacy of individuals who are accepting support? So if you're really honest with yourselves, right? And it's a great conversation to have with the care partners. How are we making sure to preserve the dignity and offer privacy for individuals? What does respect for one another look like? And this last piece, I'd really encourage you to think about, okay? What is that physical space? And does it really feel like home? Okay. So we talk a lot, we use the phrase Eden eyes. So I would encourage you all tomorrow morning, as you're walking into your building, to just pause outside before you walk through the doors and imagine that you are walking in here now as a resident. You're living here. Okay. You're not working here any longer. And I want you to walk through that environment, walk through your community, and look at it from the perspective of the elder and that this is your home. And what does that space look like? Is it truly a space that people can really feel safe and secure in? Okay, I'm going to give you 20 seconds again. I want you to keep adding to your list there of what do you need to feel secure. The other thing I want to say with these lists is you may have duplicate answers. So for instance, you may have your spouse on there for part of your identity as well as security. You can have duplicate answers in the different domains. Okay. The next domain is probably, well, I mean, I love them all, but this one's probably one of my favorites, autonomy. Okay. How many of you this morning hit the snooze alarm before you got out of bed? I hit it, I think, twice. Okay. You were able to choose if you stayed in bed longer, if you got up out of bed, if you brushed your teeth right away, what you ate for breakfast, what you got dressed in, the route that you took to work, joining in on this webinar or not, right? Think of all the choices that you had in just today from the time your eyes opened this morning to now, 1:00 p.m. Okay. Think about all the choices that you have in a day, your entire life. And then you move into an institutional model of care. What choices do we really have? And how would that impact you? How would you like to be told when you're getting up or when you're going to bed or what you're going to wear or told what to do, or these are our selection. This is what you have to choose from, but it's not really what you're interested in. How would that impact your well-being? Okay. And thinking all the choices that you have when someone makes that choice for you, how do you communicate that? Right? Okay. So I want you to think about what ways as a care partner team do we really optimize individual choice? I know our care plans say, offer choices, offer simple choice. How often are we giving choices to that individual's abilities? And then I want you to think further. That second question there, what assumptions do we make as care partners that limit choices? So what assumptions, those of us who may work on a, memory neighborhood, okay, knowing that individuals living there have a dementia diagnosis, how many times are we making choices for them, assuming they can't make these choices? And how would you feel if that was done for you? So I want you to continue on your list there and write down, what choices do you need to be able to make? What choices really impact your true well-being with autonomy? Okay, the next domain of well-being is meaning. Okay, and as recreation and activity professionals, this one really hits home. Okay, because there are many opportunities that we have that we can create meaning in an institutional model of care that we have destroyed meaning, right? We've taken the meaning away. If you think about birthdays, okay, how if we polled all of us right now, how we like to celebrate birthdays, some of us don't like to celebrate it at all. Some of us may enjoy a spa day or love a chocolate cake with peanut butter icing or, things like that. All different ways of having a meaningful birthday experience. And in an institutional model of a nursing home or personal care, what do we typically do for birthdays, right? How do we take away that meaning? And again, it's something that's just been the trend that's been accepted over the years. How do we challenge ourselves to do it differently? Okay, how do we challenge ourselves to look at how are we providing opportunity for people to have purpose? Okay, how many times have you heard an elder waking up say, "What's the use? It's another day. It's the same thing," right? There's no purpose for getting up. Where all of us, right? We chose the profession we did because we have that need for purpose. We want to make a difference. That's what gets us out of bed, right? Most of you, if we said, what do you love the most about your job? It's the elders, right? I love the elders. That gives us purpose for making that difference. So what can we do? How can we look at that differently? When we think about meaning also, we're talking about rituals. So think about your morning routine. Think about your evening routine. We're talking about objects. Okay, so for some people, maybe your wedding ring may hold a lot of value. It might be your Bible. Maybe it's a special necklace for some reason that holds a lot of meaning for you. So we can't find out this information if we're not asking the right questions, and having those relationships to be able to understand what holds meaning for you. What does that look like? Okay, so again, considering, how are we learning about each other's stories? How are we finding out what's meaningful to one person versus another? And I really love the second question. Okay, how are we really taking time to reflect and celebrate in care partners' lives? Okay, so if you think about meaning, if again, use the example of a birthday, how do we do something meaningful for a care partner beyond, we'll sign a birthday card, we're going to have a cake, for everyone. How do we do something that's meaningful for that person? How do we look at those celebrations and really allow time to get to know each other and what's meaningful? And I want you to I'm going to give you 20 seconds again, write down what brings you meaning. Write down the specifics. Okay, the next domain is growth. And this is really understanding that human beings, as long as they are living, have the desire to grow. Just because someone is older or because someone has a dementia diagnosis does not mean they have no desire to continue growing. It may be the desire to share information, maybe sharing a favorite recipe or a technique or advice, being able to pass down information, learning a new skill, trying something new, achieving a dream, but continuing to grow and develop in the way that that person desires, not in the way that their child desires, but in the way that they are desiring. What does that look like? How are we really capturing what strengths, dreams, and goals there are of individuals? How are we promoting growth based on these strengths, right? And if you think about a typical care plan, we're focusing on problems and weaknesses and lack of abilities. How do we change that mindset to really look at what can people do? What abilities do they have? And how do we promote that? How do we encourage that and nourish that? Okay, so I'm going to give you just a short time because I want to make sure we have enough time for everything today. But I want you to write down maybe 2 ideas that you need to continue growing. Okay, and the 7th domain here, again, these are in no particular order. The 7th domain is joy. And this is happiness and pleasure, true contentment, right? And joy, there's moments of joy. Okay, joy isn't happiness. How do we create those opportunities for joy that aren't structured? We can't plan and schedule joy, right? Those opportunities, meanings for joy. What does that look like for you? And what brings you joy may not bring me joy. What brings me joy, a nice hot cup of coffee, that may not mean anything to you. So thinking about how do we provide opportunities? How do we make sure joy, that domain of joy, that cup is full for elders and care partners? Okay, and for this one, I really want your team to consider, how do we share stories about joyful moments? And if you're experiencing joy with someone, how do we express that? What does that look like? How do we share that with others? Okay, so the last one here, I want you to write down 2 things that bring you joy in your life. Okay. So I want to thank you for taking time to explore it a little bit for yourselves. Really looking at, are we talking about well-being in a way that's meaningful? Okay, and I'm going to challenge you with this a little bit later. Are we looking at supporting individuals beyond just treating an illness? Okay, because we know just meeting those physical needs is not going to truly help an individual's well-being be full. Is the person that's accepting support included in the decisions? And I love question 5 here. How is your well-being improving because of the services you're providing others? Okay, so important. So I want to ask you to look at those lists that you just made. Okay, and whether or not you handwrote them or if you typed them, I want you to look through your lists, okay? And I want you to look at number 1 and get rid of it. Cross it out or delete it. Number 2, number 8, number 12, and 15. Okay, so we're getting rid of 1, 2, 8, 12, and 15. Okay, and the reason that we are getting rid of these is because you all have moved into an institutional model of care, and those are no longer available to you. So thinking about that, how does that impact your well-being? Okay, when I do this in person, people get mad at me. No, don't take that away. Okay, this is no longer available, right? I'm not sure what you put down, but it may be family members that you really love having a relationship with. One lady she loves fresh water ice, and that is a big deal for her. And that was on the one that we had removed, and she couldn't have that ice anymore. And it really impacted her well-being. Okay, so I want you to think about those pieces that are just removed from you. How is that going to impact you? And even further, how are you going to communicate that? Okay, if you think about it verbally or non-verbally, how are you communicating now that those things aren't available and now you're feeling sad, down, depressed, angry, frustrated because your well-being is greatly impacted? Again, I often think of COVID, right? We were vocal about how it was affecting us, our well-being, okay? But I want you to think even further to individuals living with dementia. So how do individuals living with dementia communicate this to us? Okay, and if I could ask, if you could just throw a few answers in the chat box. What do individuals living with dementia, if their well-being isn't being met, how are they communicating that with us? And Charles or Meg, if you just want to read a few of them, that would be great.
Responsive behavior, behaviors, refusing care, anger, wandering, upset, cursing, tearfulness, depression, isolation, behaviors, facial expression, confusing, crying, lashing out. Many more.
Yes, yes, yes. And you guys all hit the nail on the head. Okay. Screaming, crying, hitting, isolating, wandering, pacing, saying, I want to go home, right? Individuals with dementia are communicating to us in the way that they're able to. But oftentimes, how are we reading that? How are we understanding their behavior? Okay, so these terms you see here, right? We see these in ID notes. We see them on behavior tracking forms. We hear them in stand-up meetings and huddles, right? And if we're honest with ourselves, we usually say, do they have a UTI? We need to check their urine. Do they need a psych consult? Okay, but think about ourselves when our well-being is not intact, how we might express that. Individuals living with dementia are expressing it just the same. They might not be able to verbalize it the way we can, but they're expressing it to us in that same way. So we often, right? I think that was even in the chat a few times. We look at it as behaviors. Okay. Oh my gosh, they're challenging behaviors. They're having disruptive behaviors. Okay. But I'm going to encourage you, and I'm challenging you at the end today to look at it instead as an unmet need. Okay. And it changes our thought process. If we're only looking at it as a symptom of dementia, if we're only looking at it as they're hitting, they're crying, they're isolating themselves, it's because they have dementia. It's the dementia. We are not serving and supporting these individuals to the best that we can, simply by looking at a different approach, that they have an unmet need. That, right? If someone is hitting, why don't we step back and look at it experientially? Okay, we often look at that physical need, right? We just said UTI, get their urine, whatever. We might look at the environment. Are they hot, cold, hungry? Okay, but I'm going to challenge you to look even further. Okay, maybe they don't feel safe. Maybe they don't feel secure. Maybe that's why they're hitting. They might be scared. Maybe they're feeling anxious. Maybe they're lacking meaning in what they're doing. Right? There could be a variety of reasons that we often don't even consider, that I really want to challenge you to understand and encourage your teams to look at that differently as well. Right? How can we look at those domains of well-being differently? Okay. And I want you to think as well, how can you support those domains of well-being? Okay, so I know most of you are working activities and recreation. How can you do something differently with an activities approach? Okay, so when you're planning interventions and planning activities for the individuals you're supporting, how can you consider the domain of meaning? How can you consider the domain of safety or connectedness? Okay, beyond what we're already doing. How can we look at this differently? And I have a few suggestions for you, but I want you to continue probing and stretching further and considering other ideas. But if we're thinking about identity, okay, how I have on here leisure enjoyments, right? How do we really look at what that person has enjoyed their whole life, leisure-wise, and encourage that and their involvement with it versus having them come to what we already have as our schedule. Okay, how do we look at that differently to be able to meet their need better so they feel seen? Okay, again, pictures, reminiscing, that always helps to build that relationship. The opportunity for growth. Okay, doing with, not for. Okay, so if someone is challenging and trying something new, right? If any of you have been to a wine and paint night, okay, and you're not an artist, how would it make you feel if the leader for that program came over and took your paintbrush and started doing the activity, do that painting for you because it didn't look how it should? Okay, so how can we do with people instead of doing it for them, right? We all know that process is what is so important, not really the end product. Building on strengths and abilities. Okay, how can we look at our programming differently, that it really focuses on people's strengths and their abilities that they have versus focusing on what people aren't able to do? Being connected, okay, to actually be present. And I want to share with you, we had a speaker at one of our Eden home office retreats, and she's living with Alzheimer's. And she said one of the most powerful things that I love sharing with groups. She said, sometimes it's okay to sit and be silent. That was really powerful, right? Sometimes just actually being present with someone, being in the environment and giving them your full attention, not being distracted by your phone or an email or having a million tasks run through your head. And I understand, right? I get that, totally understand that perspective. But being able to sit and just be fully present with someone really allows that connection. Joy. Okay, so thinking about how do we bring to life simple pleasures for people, right? Finding out those specific details. Someone likes chocolate. Okay, do they like milk chocolate, dark chocolate? Do they like a candy bar? Do they like pudding? Do they like ice cream? Do they like it in the morning, afternoon, evening? There's all kinds of things that can be details that mean so much to a person that bring them pleasure. Okay, I always use the example myself with coffee. You know, it's really hot in a ceramic mug with a big handle and a certain creamer, right? Finding out what are those pleasures that really bring people true joy. Security. Okay. I think for activities, the recreation professionals, this last one really is a key. Okay. Providing those comfortable social situations, right? We know it. Oftentimes family members are the ones that are pushing, encouraging. Don't ask mom, just take her. Mom needs to be around people, okay? But we need to be the advocate, right? We need to make sure that people are comfortable in those social situations, that we're providing large groups, small groups, things in rooms, whatever that person, whatever setting is comfortable for that person so they truly feel safe and secure. Again, decisions, being able to choose the routine, as well as letting go of the disempowering language. I started out with, you know, language makes a difference. And being able, you know, saying to someone, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to go out there right now, right? Imagine someone telling you that. That just makes you want to do it even more. So, you know, how can we turn that around and let people know what they can do versus telling them what they can't? And the last one there is meaning, right? Thinking about what kind of meaningful activities and rituals can we encourage and support throughout the day for those that we're supporting. Okay, so I have some growth work for you. First one is to work on changing your paradigm, right? Your own thoughts, that instead of looking at it when your natural reaction is it's a behavior, they're having behaviors, right? It's a challenging behavior. Change that thought in your head to this is an unmet need. And how can I be the one to look at this differently to be able to support them better? Okay, so that's the first challenge for you. The second one is using your Eden eyes. So tomorrow, I want you to walk into that community where you work and really look at it from the perspective of this is a home. This is my home now where I'm going to live. And how would that affect my well-being? Okay. And when you're taking in those Eden eyes, I want you to consider sights, sounds, smells, everything that you're seeing, hearing, everything in that environment to really truly be home. And the last one is challenging you to really bring those domains to life. Okay. And I'd love to hear about it. If you're implementing anything new or if you have a different thought, love to hear about that from you, but really think, how can I approach things differently to meet those needs, those unmet needs of people living with dementia? And before we finish here, I just wanted to ask, I didn't know, Charles or Meg, if any questions came up in the chat box that we would want to talk about real quick before we moved on.
Sure. Thank you so much, Emily. Good to see you. A quick question. How do you measure some of the SMART goals that you were outlining? Any thoughts about that?
Measuring, like with the ideas, with the
Yes.
suggestions.
Yeah.
So you could look at measurement tools related to, you know, how are we looking at falls? How are we looking at, I'm going to say behaviors, right, that need to be medicated? How are we looking at that individual, again, not on a broad scale, but that person individually? What is their level with activities? You know, how are we looking at their participation and engagement during an activity, their amount of refusals? Those are things that you could easily be able to look at and judge, taking a different approach and meeting their need.
Sure. Another question was, when you think of the care partners, do you have any recommendation for tools to help educate them? And side question, maybe Eden has some. Where would people go and visit and find out more about that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we have a lot of tools for use with care partners. And I can help you with that as well if we run out of time today. I do have the next slide, I have my contact information. But yes, we have tools for connecting with care partners, communicating, building relationships. Also at the conference, we have an entire track that is focused on educational sessions related to retention, attracting care partners. But we have an empowered teams training We also have our Eden Associate Training, which focuses on care partners' well-being as well as elders' well-being in way more depth than what I've just shared with you.
Yeah. Another question which I thought was interesting was somebody was asking in the Q&A, you know, there's this concept of flow, right? Like when we're in the moment and everything appears to be 100% perfect the way it is. And so the question was simply, you know, how is flow similar to well-being, and, you know, differences? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, yes. I know at the college, we talk about the theory of flow a lot, right?
Yeah.
And adjusting, right? And just like with flow, the flow theory, and with activities, right? We're always looking at what needs to be adjusted. How can I adapt it to keep the person engaged? Not that it's too engaging or too challenging for them, but right at their skill level. And that's the, you know, well-being is similar in that we're always adjusting for well-being. And even if you think about it in relation to yourself, you may feel real safe and secure right now, but maybe your connectedness might be a little out of whack. And one of our classes that we do, we actually have team members in the class actually measure each of your domains of well-being, and to be aware that that impacts your coworkers as well, right? And as good care partners to each other, we need to be aware that maybe they've responded that way to me because, you know, their domain, their cup isn't as full, and that as a good care partner and caring about them, I need to be aware of that.
Yeah. Now I have one last question, and that's me asking it. And
Okay.
and the reason I was excited to ask you that question, Amelie, is with your background as a CTRS, and it's I'm hoping that you can correct me, right? So let me explain. So when I explain to people that know nothing about senior living and basically what we all do in activities in life enrichment, I explain that with a diagnosis of dementia or not, just the normal course of aging, you lose self-recreation ability, right? And that's what activities in life enrichment. But the problem when I say that is that it's very negative, if you see what I'm saying. So do you have any recommendation on how I should change verbiage?
Yes, well, I would, one thing that kind of stood out to me when you said that was that the focus is that we lose those abilities.
Yeah.
Where, I like to point out that's the beauty of therapeutic recreation. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, right? We are, as the normal aging process occurs, recreation needs to be adapted for people to be able to enjoy it to their full potential. And that's the beauty of our jobs, is figuring out how to adapt something and sometimes teaching people how to do it differently so that they can still enjoy life to the fullest, like, you know, any age. So yeah, I would just change the, you know, the negative piece to it, that it is a positive thing. And we're blessed to have activities recreation professionals in these settings that really can bring meaning and purpose and joy, you know, which is so important for humans.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, I sometimes refer to the fact that purpose is a basic human right. So what we do here is essential. We're safeguarding and promoting this human right. So thank you so much, Emily. If you don't mind, I'd love to share my screen because actually
the first to let everybody know.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there's my information if you want to stay in touch. I am on LinkedIn. And I also wanted to share with you, Eden Alternative has LinkedIn and Facebook profiles and pages. So if you're interested in more information, please get in touch. We're here to support communities. So we're here to help you however that is. So, okay.
Thanks so much, Emily. And actually, I was just about to do the same, actually, which is on my slide, I have Emily's contacts. And I was also going to invite everyone to consider linking up with Emily and her amazing organization, the Eden Alternative. Emily spoke briefly about their international conference on June 2nd. And we at Link Senior are so excited to both be presenting, but also sponsoring. So we are very happy to participate in this session. Thank you so much, Emily. A pleasure to have you. Really fascinating presentation.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone for joining in. I know how busy you are, so I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Just before we wrap up completely, just a few announcements that are about events coming up. Here was the slide that I wanted to make sure that I connect on. And if you have any questions about it, you can definitely Google it or use your phone to use the QR code. It's going to link you up directly to the website. But I hope that many of you will see you all there. In terms of upcoming events, just wanted to share that our next webinar is really going to be fascinating. It's one of my favorite series. It's the one where we invite quote unquote people doing the work. So here in this case, two leaders in two amazing organizations, Janine Kinsey with American Senior Communities, which is a well-known provider in Indiana, and then Amanda Jelenik, who's the Vice President of Life Enrichment for Morning Point Senior Living, and just going to talk about their current work, what they see, trends, and helping us elevate resident engagement. And then this following one is going to be very different approach, exciting. I connected with David on Friday about this. He actually worked for Disney before, and it's taking this viewpoint of what happened if Disney ran your senior living experience. A lot to learn, elevating the discussion. And then another one is going to be in June, LGBT older adults concern and strategy for care and programming. And then last but not least, our biggest event of the year. We're finalizing it. Little hint, it's definitely in the line of what Emily was sharing with us around dementia and dementia inclusion. So very excited for this. Feel free to sign up. We'll be releasing the agenda in the coming days, maybe weeks. But most of it is firmed up, and I think it's probably going to be our best event so far. So it's the 5th year in the making, and excited for that. Emily, thank you so much again. And
Thank you. Yes.
I know I'll see you with Voice and at the conference. Take care.
I can. As I say, please say hi, and thanks for all that you do for recreation professionals, and thanks to all of you recreation professionals for all that you do.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Emily. Take care. Good afternoon.